Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now, let's go. I remember the chair first. It was just an old armchair we'd hauled up from the basement years ago. Faded upholstery with a few loose threads. She used to drape a blanket over it on cold nights. That night, though, there was no blanket. No clothes either. She was sitting there, naked, her skin pressed against the worn fabric, as if she were someplace private and safe. Her hair was a mess, still damp from the shower. The overhead light was too harsh, making every line of her body look sharp. She didn't rush to cover herself. Not then. And I stood there in the hallway, watching her, feeling something twist inside me. That memory used to be beautiful. A snapshot of intimacy and desire. Now it's a poison. I can't even glance at that chair without feeling an ache deep in my gut. It's strange to talk about physical pain when it's really emotional, when it's your heart that's broken. But I feel it everywhere. My arms, my legs, even in my back. There's a clamp somewhere just beneath my rib cage, twisting every time I breathe. Every memory of her nails into me like a shard of glass. That night, I should have asked her why she was sitting there like that, in the darkness, with no sound but the slow hum of the furnace. I should have noticed the tension in her shoulders, how she wasn't smiling like she used to. But I took her nudity as an invitation. I leaned in, kissed her neck, felt her pulse, and she let me. She even whispered something I don't fully recall, maybe a tired endearment. That was before everything cracked. Before I realized she was holding on to secrets that would tear my life apart. I'm Rob Westbrook, 48. I manage operations for a local manufacturing company and live in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Chicago. The man I used to be believed in security, in the idea that if you worked hard, stayed loyal, you'd earn the right to a decent home, a devoted wife, a future that wouldn't betray you. I used to watch myself in the mirror every morning, adjusting the knot of my tie, thinking I was heading towards something stable and lasting. I even took pictures, selfies, video diaries, tracking the gradual march of time across my face. I used to joke that it was my way of seeing how slowly I was dying. It was a strange hobby, maybe, but I found it oddly comforting. But now, when I scroll through those images, I see a fool. A man too blind to notice how his own wife slipped away from him, day by day, until I barely recognized her. Her name is Cynthia, 44, with a master's degree in marketing. She's the type who walks into a room and instantly commands attention. Soft voice, but confident presence. For years, I thought we had the kind of marriage people envied. We rarely argued in public. We shared finances easily enough, took vacations when we could. To anyone looking in from the outside, we were a team. But behind closed doors, we both fell silent more often. She'd busy herself with yoga routines or late-night phone calls, always clients who needed her advice, or so she claimed. I never pressed. Maybe I should have. Maybe if I had demanded her time, demanded her truths, I would have seen the cracks forming. Instead, I let her slip away in whispers. The first sign was the taxi driver, Julian Reyes. He had a particular half-smile every time he pulled up to our driveway. She'd wave goodbye and say, "Going to a meeting, I'll text you." But I'd stand by the window, watching them share a look. I couldn't put my finger on it then, just a flicker in her eyes, a shift in her posture. That same tension I'd seen in the living room the night she sat naked on that chair, I brushed it off. I told myself I was paranoid. I told myself that a smile meant nothing. If anything, I thought he was just a friendly guy who enjoyed having a repeat client. But day by day, that smile got bolder. She started wearing more elaborate outfits, longer heels, lighter dresses, even when the weather was cold. I told myself she was just dressing for success, making impressions on her clients. Another lie. I found out about the DNA test by accident. I was clearing out old papers in the study, rummaging through desk drawers for a staple remover. Among her neatly stapled documents was a small envelope from a testing center. Inside, words that knocked the breath from my lungs. Probability of paternity, 0%. We don't have children. Never did. She always said she wasn't sure she wanted them. And I respected that. So this test was about something else, or someone else. My head spun. I asked myself if maybe it was for a friend, or some distant relative. But no, the result was linked to a name, my name, and a reference to Sample B. The test date was only a few weeks prior. A wave of nausea rolled through me. She'd gone behind my back, submitted a DNA sample to check. What exactly? My mind leaked to 1,000 conclusions. None of them made sense. None of them were good. I felt my pulse hammer as I confronted her about the envelope that evening. She was home late, looking tired, or maybe just irritated that I was poking around. When I held up the paper, she stared at it. She exhaled slowly. "Rob," she said, "this isn't what you think." But her eyes flickered away, focusing on a spot behind me. She started weaving some long explanation. Something about a friend needing help, or a medical study. Her voice got faster, more frantic, but her words seemed to circle around the real meaning. I stood there, jaw tight, not saying much more than explain. Really? Why? While she filled the air with 1,000 empty lines. I felt a dull ache in my side, as if someone had punched me there. The clamp under my ribs tightened. She insisted the test was nothing sinister, but I saw her hands shaking. It was enough to raise red flags all over my mind. Later, I discovered the video. Cynthia knew nothing about my phone's backup system. She probably never thought I'd get curious enough to check. But I'd installed a small dash camera in her car years back, some safety measure I'd forgotten to remove when the car got traded in. She'd been using Julian's taxi more often, so that camera had ended up behind the passenger seat, tucked near the floor mat. I wasn't even sure if it still worked, but I retrieved the footage from the cloud out of a desperation I couldn't name. I remember the moment it played on my screen. A flicker of movement, the angle not perfect, but good enough to see them parked in an empty lot. The lens caught her leaning across the seat, their lips meeting so naturally, as if they'd done it a dozen times. He had one hand on the wheel and the other around her neck, fingers tangled in her hair, a casual, confident kiss like they'd been lovers for months. My stomach turned. My eyes burned. The ache in my body was so real I could hardly move. I watched it again. And again. I confronted her a second time. My words were clipped. Explain. Now. She tried another long speech, but I only gave her single-syllable challenges. When? Where? Why? She cried, said she was sorry, then said it was a mistake, said she felt lonely, said she didn't know how to talk to me anymore. Her tears made me feel nothing but exhaustion. I thought about that old armchair, the way her skin pressed into the fabric. I remembered the shape of her body under my palms. Now I couldn't help imagining Julian's hands there instead. The coldness in my stomach turned to something darker, a swirling pit that felt like it could swallow me whole. I might have forgiven her if she'd shown genuine regret, if she'd just told me the full truth without turning it into a performance. But everything about her reaction felt staged, like a marketing pitch to salvage her image. She wanted me to see her as the victim of her own confusion. Meanwhile, I was the one choking on bitterness. Days turned into weeks. She'd slip in and out of the house, claiming meetings or errands. I withdrew, burying myself in work. My nights grew restless. I couldn't sleep for more than an hour at a time. I stared at the ceiling, my mind replaying that video of them in the taxi. Each time, the physical pain in my chest flared, making me wonder if I should see a doctor. But I knew the cure wouldn't be found in any medicine. It was deeper, a sickness with no remedy, fueled by the woman I no longer recognized. I began to quietly spread rumors among her circle of friends, people who once saw her as a polished professional with a stable home life. I dropped subtle hints about her dishonesty, about secrets she was keeping, about questionable behavior. A word here, a suggestion there. I watched how quickly they ate it up. People love drama, especially in our comfortable suburb, where everything is so polite on the surface. And Cynthia had worked so hard to cultivate a spotless reputation. I wanted to see that reputation crack the way my heart had. It was petty, maybe even cruel, but I needed some form of retribution. I wasn't ready for the final blow. Not yet, but I could stoke the fire, watch it spread. Every time she looked at me, really looked, I saw the temperature in her eyes drop a degree. She had no illusions left about the man she thought she knew. In my silence, she sensed a storm. She tried reaching for me once in bed, but I pulled away, turning my back. Even that small contact felt like a slap. I told her, curtly, "Don't." She responded with a half-whispered explanation. Something about how she still loved me, how she was sorry, how she never meant to hurt me. All I could manage was a flat, "Sure." The cold, internal emptiness inside me was better than any heated argument. It was safer for my sanity to keep that distance. I remember the moment I decided to do something final, something irreversible. It was a Sunday morning. I'd hardly slept. I wandered into the living room and saw the chair again. The memory flashed, her naked, her spine pressing into the old cushion, the soft curve of her silhouette in the lamplight. I felt disgust coil in my throat. I wanted to rip that chair apart, throw it in the fireplace, watch the fabric burn. Instead, I stepped outside to the garage. And there, among the clutter of old tools and half-finished projects, I felt a wave of calm settle over me. The slow turn of an idea. Something about that hush in the garage, the dust floating in pale sunlight, made me realize how easy it could be, just me, her, and the final act. If there was no coming back from this, then at least I'd have control. I'd have a release from the gnawing pain. I didn't race into it. I took my time, let the plan form in the back of my mind. The physical ache in my body became almost a companion, guiding me. I started paying closer attention to her schedule. She had a late client meeting downtown on a Thursday. She'd be out until 10. I knew Julian would be her ride. He always was. So I offered to pick her up instead, claiming I was worried about her working so late. She seemed suspicious but agreed. Maybe a flicker of hope in her eyes. Maybe she thought I was finally ready to mend things. I played the role of the stoic husband, the man who tries to be responsible and supportive. My voice was calm, my words minimal. That night, I waited outside the building. She emerged looking tired, arms crossed against the chill. Her eyes roamed the sidewalk before settling on my car. She slid into the passenger seat. "Thanks," she said, with a small half-smile. I put the car in drive, not replying. The city lights slid by, cold reflections in the windows. She tried to start a conversation about her day. Long meeting, new client, tough negotiations. I gave one-word answers, letting her fill the silence with her elaborate commentary. Eventually, she sighed and turned her face to the window, her breath fogging the glass. I headed not toward home, but to an empty lot near the old railway tracks. She stiffened when she recognized the turn. "Rob." Her voice was tight. I stopped the engine, leaving us in the darkness. I could smell the faint scent of her perfume, mixing with the stale odor of dust from the car's heater. My head pounded. I felt the clamp in my ribs again, telling me this was it, no going back. She asked, "Why are we here?" I locked my gaze on her. "I need to know everything," I said, each syllable tasting like bitterness on my tongue. She launched into another excuse-laden monologue, paragraphs of justification. She said she felt our marriage was stagnant, that I was never available emotionally, that she never wanted to replace me. She just wanted to feel alive again. She apologized in circles. She said she'd end it with Julian, that it was just a moment of weakness. I let her talk, watched the tears well up. My mind was half somewhere else, picturing the final act. When she finally paused, I heard myself say, "Too late." She kept pleading. I reached into the glove compartment, and her eyes followed my hand. I won't detail the act itself. It was violent, swift, fueled by months of betrayal congealed into a single decisive thrust of anger. A moment of unstoppable momentum. I felt the release in my chest, like the clamp snapped open, letting me breathe for the first time in ages. Her eyes went wide with shock. She tried to speak, but no words came. The damp city air closed in around us. For a moment, time slowed to a crawl. I swear I heard my own heartbeat echo in my ears. And then stillness. The raw hum of the engine had died. The streetlights overhead flickered, painting the sickly orange glow on her face, which had slackened into something unrecognizable. My breath caught. My body trembled with the shock of what I'd done. She remained there, pinned by my rage, eyes half-lidded. It took a second for my mind to catch up. I killed her. That single fact started repeating in my skull like a broken record. She's gone. She's gone. She's gone. I sat there for a long time, my pulse thudding in my ears. I felt no triumph, just a hollow exhaustion. Outside, a distant train clattered on the rails. I breathed slowly, noticing that my side didn't hurt anymore. No clamp, no twisting ache, just an odd lightness, like I was floating. My hand shook on the steering wheel. Reality began to seep in. My wife, my partner of 15 years, was slumped in the passenger seat, lifeless, and I was alone with the consequences of my darkest impulse. Eventually, I started the car again. I don't remember the route I took. In my head, a reel of images played. Her smile when I first met her. The day we said our vows. The nights we spent binge-watching old movies. The time she sat naked in that armchair. The way she moaned my name. The guilty warmth in her eyes when she tried to apologize. It all churned together until I couldn't distinguish memory from nightmare. I ended up at an abandoned service road near an industrial complex. There, under the cover of silence, I took her body out. The ground was muddy. I nearly slipped. I carried her as best I could, feeling my breath rasp. In the faint moonlight, I saw the reflection of her hair, the curve of her shoulder. I pressed a kiss to her forehead, cold by then, and laid her down against the rough gravel. I allowed myself a moment to say goodbye, though it was less of a goodbye and more of a numb acceptance. My tears never came. Maybe that's the final cruelty of betrayal. It drains you so thoroughly that even grief can't find a foothold. Eventually, I returned to the car, wiping my hands on the seat, trying to calm the frantic pounding of my heart. I drove home slowly. I half expected sirens, a spotlight, some unstoppable force to pull me over. But the streets were empty. It felt as though this city was indifferent to my tragedy, to my monstrous act. I walked into our house, which was eerily quiet. The living room light was still on. That damned armchair sat there, mocking me with its silence. I stood and stared at it, recalling how it had once been a place of intimacy. Now it was the symbol of everything broken. For a second, I considered dousing it with gasoline and setting it ablaze in the driveway. But I was too tired to make such a scene. Instead, I went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and drank slowly. The cold liquid tasted like shards of ice sliding down my throat. The next day, I moved through life like a specter. I showed up at work, put on my manager's face, led meetings about production targets. Inside, I was hollow. A few coworkers commented that I looked pale, maybe stressed. I nodded, gave them some excuse about not sleeping well, waiting for the weekend. The only real emotion I felt was the faint twinge of relief that the clamp in my ribs was gone. A coworker cracked a joke about midlife crisis, and I forced a chuckle, my mind reeling with the knowledge that everything in my life had shattered beyond repair. Weeks slid by in a haze. I saw news articles about a Jane Doe found near an industrial site. The local police asked for information. They had no leads. They didn't mention a husband or a suspect. My hand quivered when I read the headline on my phone. I forced myself to stay calm. The details were vague. No ID on the body, No security footage in the area. The investigators said they were working on forensics. For a moment, panic coiled in me. Would they find out about the DNA test, the rumors I spread, the cracks in our marriage? But no one came knocking at my door. Cynthia's friends were clueless about her whereabouts, whispering that maybe she'd run off or had an emotional breakdown. I let them wonder. I told people she'd left me, that she needed space. Some looked sympathetic, others raised eyebrows. The web of lies expanded, but it held together. For a time, at least. Julian Rice, her lover, seemed shaken. I heard from a neighbor that he'd been snooping around, asking if anyone had seen her. He even stopped by our house once, though I didn't answer the door. I watched from the window as he stood there, pacing, running a hand through his short black hair. He looked anxious, worried. A part of me almost felt pity. Another part wanted to wring his neck. But I stayed hidden. Eventually, he drove off. I stared at the empty street, thinking about how easily one can slip away into nothingness. The physical pain in my body didn't return, but a new discomfort took its place. An uneasy sensation in my gut that I'd become something unrecognizable. I tried to tell myself that Cynthia's betrayal, her lies, had justified my rage. But sometimes in the quiet moments, I wondered if I was just a monster who'd lost the last shred of humanity he had. I tried to bury those doubts with busywork, with errands, with alcohol. Sometimes I'd wake in the middle of the night, half expecting to find her sitting naked in that chair again, a faint lamplight catching the curve of her collarbone. But the house was always dark, always silent. I think about how so many stories end with the killer either caught or consumed by guilt. In my case, it's not so cut and dried. Yes, I feel guilt in waves, but it's overshadowed by a grim sense of finality. The betrayal ended, the lies died with her. I've played the entire chain of events in my head 1,000 times, like scanning through raw footage. Some frames skipped, some angles flicker, but the main plot remains the same. She cheated, I discovered, I confronted, and I killed. That's the shape of my story now. It's as cold and unflinching as the winter wind off Lake Michigan. People at the office joke about me becoming a workaholic. My hair's grayer, my eyes have more lines. I have no illusions left. The only comfort is that physical ache under my ribs is gone. But I wouldn't say I'm at peace. I'm just existing, day by day, waiting to see if the world will notice what I did. Some nights, I climb into bed and stare at the space where she used to lie. I don't feel regret about the act itself. I feel regret that we ever reached the point where such an act was possible. The emptiness sits inside me, numb and quiet, like a presence that refuses to leave. The police tried to identify her with the usual methods: dental records, missing persons reports. I braced myself each time I heard an update on the news, but they never officially matched her to the remains found by the tracks. Could be that the evidence was too partial, or the lab work is backlogged. Could be that her records were hidden behind some glitch. I keep expecting that knock on the door, but it hasn't come yet. Maybe one day it will. Maybe it won't. Life is indifferent to such details. One evening, as I was pulling into my driveway, I saw Julian's taxi parked down the street. He stood there, leaning against the car, arms folded. His gaze was fixed on my house. I felt a jolt of adrenaline. My mind roared with the possibility that he suspected me. But he didn't approach. He just stared, his eyes distant, haunted. I cut the engine and stepped out. He took a few steps toward me. "Mr. Westbrook," he said softly. I felt my hands tense at my sides. Cynthia, she used to talk about how you two fell in love," he continued. He paused, glancing down. I haven't heard from her. I offered a blank stare, my heart pounding in my ears. "She left," I said. "I don't know where. She didn't confide in me." He waited, maybe hoping I'd show a crack, a quiver in my voice. I gave him nothing. Finally, he nodded, looking pained, like a man who lost something he never deserved in the first place. After a moment of heavy silence, he climbed into his taxi and drove off. I went inside, slammed the door shut, and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My mind screamed that he might come back with questions, maybe with the cops. But as days dragged on, he didn't return. Maybe he accepted the story. Maybe he recognized something in my eyes that told him to stay away. At night, I still can't sleep for long. I drift through the house, flicking on lamps, rummaging through cabinets just to remind myself that I'm real, that this isn't some slow nightmare. The highlight of my day is sometimes noticing new lines in my face when I check my reflection, or maybe tidying up old junk in the garage. Anything that anchors me. I haven't touched her stuff yet. Her clothes still hang in the closet. Her perfume bottle sits on the dresser. The bed still has her pillow, though I catch myself sometimes pressing my hand there, feeling the cold sheets, remembering how warm she used to be. Despite the fact that I ended her life, some part of me wants to preserve her memory in the mundane details of our home. I keep going back to the old footage I recorded of myself, my daily selfies, the logs of my slow aging. I see the changes in my face, the illusions in my smile. I skip forward to the day I discovered her affair, the day the hope died in my eyes. I keep watching that subtle transformation like a slow-motion car crash. This is the closest thing to a time machine I have, witnessing the man I used to be, day by day, turning into the man I am now. It's horrifying and fascinating. Sometimes I wonder if I was destined to become this creature. Perhaps I've always had that capacity for violence inside me, lurking just below the surface. Every time I see the news mention an unidentified body, my pulse spikes. I imagine them discovering fresh evidence that points directly to me. But the months pass, and the city's collective attention veers to other stories. Political scandals, sports, a local celebrity's meltdown. Human life is alarmingly cheap in a metropolis of millions. Another missing person, another unsolved death, lost in the shuffle. I try to tell myself this is some cosmic justice. She lied, she betrayed me. And now she's gone, her story overshadowed by bigger headlines. Yet the satisfaction I thought I'd feel never truly came. Instead, I'm left with a sense of drifting in a cold emptiness, like floating on an iceberg, carrying a secret no one else can see. Late one night, I revisit the memory. That first day, she was naked in the chair, her posture relaxed, her hair still damp. I'd approached her with desire, not yet aware of how she was pulling away from me emotionally. Now, it's a tainted recollection, something that leaves a sour taste in my mouth. I used to think that moment was intimate, maybe even romantic. In hindsight, it was a warning sign. She was distant even then, letting me close physically, while keeping me locked out emotionally. She was half lost to me already. I pour a glass of whiskey and think about how coldness is still an emotion, just like anger, just like jealousy. It's a slow freeze that creeps over you when you've been hurt too deep to cry. That's what I became. A man encased in ice, unable to feel warmth. The world around me moves in slow motion, and I'm a spectator with nowhere else to go. Sometimes I want to smash that ice, tear it open, let the meltdown come. But I'm terrified of what I find underneath. Maybe a raw madness that could never be contained again. So I maintain the facade, keep my distance, and let the cold remain. People notice I'm quieter these days. They assume I'm still grieving the sudden disappearance of my wife. Perhaps they think she left me for a better man, and I'm licking my wounds in private. Nobody outright says it, but I see it in their eyes. Pity. They must figure I was never enough for her, or that our marriage had rotted from within. If only they knew how far the rot really went. In a way, I appreciate their ignorance. Pity is better than suspicion. Julian surfaces in my mind occasionally. I imagine what he felt for her, whether it was genuine or just a fling. Does he lie awake, missing her voice, her touch? Does he suspect me? Maybe, in his own tortured way, he regrets everything. But I don't dwell on it long. He was just a symptom of the deeper sickness in our marriage. My problem was always with Cynthia, with the betrayal she let fester between us. I wonder if he keeps that memory of kissing her in the taxi like some cherished relic, or if it haunts him. Either way, it doesn't matter to me now. The rumor mill has quieted. Her friends eventually moved on to other gossip. Some asked me if I had any update on her whereabouts. I'd shrug, say something vague about not hearing from her. Their faces would shift from concern to discomfort. People don't like to confront the possibility that a marriage can disintegrate so thoroughly that one partner vanishes without a trace. They prefer to keep their illusions intact. I let them. In my more honest moments, I know that what I did cannot be undone or rationalized. I took a life. Her life. But I also can't deny the sense of finality it brought me. The physical ache that once spread through my body is gone, replaced by a numb acceptance. Sometimes numbness is the only way to survive. I suspect the guilt may sink its teeth in someday, maybe years from now, when I'm too frail to keep it at bay. For now, I just function, day by day, carrying this chill inside me like a glacial mass. I've considered leaving Chicago, starting fresh in another city. But that would raise suspicions. Besides, I've spent most of my adult life here, building the stable foundation I thought would last forever. Maybe I need to stay, to punish myself by living in the home we shared, by seeing the damned armchair every morning, by remembering everything that led to the final act. Perhaps that's my real punishment, to exist among the ghosts of the life we once had, hearing echoes of her laughter in every silent room. I've removed the dash camera footage from the cloud, wiped away any trace of it. The DNA test envelope I shredded and burned in the fireplace. The rumors I started against her are still out there, but they no longer matter. She's not around to suffer them. It's ironic. I wanted revenge. I wanted to ruin her reputation. But in the end, I did something infinitely more final. Some nights, I run my hand along the old armchair, feeling the coarse fabric under my palm, remembering her bare skin pressed against it. I whisper, "Why?" and the silence stares back at me. I have no answer, just an echo of the question. All that remains is the choice I made in that deserted lot, the violence that spilled out of me and took her life. People say that eventually you come to terms with your choices, that time scabs over the wounds. But I'm not looking for healing. I'm just drifting, watching the slow decay of my soul. I guess I still take pictures of myself sometimes. It's a habit I can't fully shake. I look at my face in the new photographs, a man with hollow eyes, a grim line for a mouth, threads of gray in his hair. I'm curious if, over time, I'll see another transformation. If the numbness will spread or if some flicker of remorse will appear in my gaze. Either way, I keep snapping these images, as if trying to document my own slow decline into dust. I wonder if Cynthia ever loved me in the end, or if she stayed out of habit, out of fear, out of convenience. But those answers died with her. I've told myself it doesn't matter. Love, betrayal, regret. They're just words. Still, I can't help feeling that the cold is the only real emotion I have left. It's like a second skin, an armor made of ice. Sometimes, I dream that I'm standing in the living room, and she's there, naked on that chair, bathed in the harsh overhead light, her hair dripping water onto the cushion. I approach, and she turns her head to me. Her eyes as empty as the night I took her life. She opens her mouth, but no sound emerges. And then I wake up, heart pounding. For a split second, I think she's next to me in bed. But I feel only cold sheets and hear only my own ragged breath. Morning comes, and I rise, dress, and go to work. My coworkers greet me, ask how I'm doing. I'm fine, I say. Just that. They fill the space with their own chatter, and I slip into the routine. At lunch, I might stare at the steam rising off my coffee and think about how warmth disappears into the air. It never stays. Like my marriage. Like everything else. That's the shape of my life now. A quiet man, going through the motions, harboring a secret so dark, it might consume me if I ever dared face it fully. But for now, I hold it at bay. just as I hold the memory of the woman she was before she betrayed me. Everything is slow. Each second drags across my consciousness, reminding me that the clamp in my ribs may be gone, but it's replaced by a numbness so thick it might as well be steel. And at the end of every day, I come home to that same armchair, the same poisoned memory. Sometimes I sit in it, letting the light cast my shadow on the wall. I wonder if I'll ever feel real warmth again, or if this cold is my new companion. If so, maybe that's the price for vengeance. Maybe that's how I keep going, frozen inside, too numb to care. And maybe that's enough. I close my eyes, let out a slow breath. The house is silent, full of ghosts. And all I can feel is that dull, persistent chill that clings to me like a second skin. I think about her final look, shock, betrayal, an apology that never reached her lips. A part of me tries to ask for forgiveness, but the words don't form. I guess it's fitting that I should be left with silence in the end. I stand, walk past the armchair, and switch off the light. Everything slips into darkness, and for a moment, that darkness feels almost comforting. Then I realize the difference between comfort and emptiness is just another illusion. And illusions died the night I murdered my wife. Maybe that's all I have left, a cold, silent truth that weighs on me every time I take a breath. I stare at the outline of that chair one last time. Then I turn away. The house remains still, and I know that for now, no one is coming to save me from myself. And that's the final memory I cling to, the knowledge that I have become the author of my own misery. The clamp is gone. The cold is all that's left. And in this slow, suffocating hush, I close my eyes and wait for another sleepless night to pass.